Hello and welcome. My name is Francisco, and in this video, we are going to use Framer Motion to animate elements as they scroll into and out of your viewport. Framer Motion will allow us to animate elements as they scroll into the view. For this example, we're going to be using scroll triggered animations, and what that's going to look like is we will be able to attach any type of animation into the element as it scrolls into view. Here's the example we are going to be working with. Please notice as I refresh the screen how the elements animate into view. And as we scroll down into the site, you'll also notice that these elements are appearing and they will also disappear as we scroll out of the viewport. So if I were to scroll back the other way, you'll see that the elements are also appearing on the screen. Okay, so here's our coding environment. I am working with a React.js app, but of course, if you're using next.js, which uses React, you are able to use Framer Motion in a next.js website. I have package.json open because I want to show you that I've installed Framer Motion. I used npm install Framer Motion. Here's our app. And I wanted to keep it simple so that we focus on the animations themselves. Once we begin to add a lot of animations, it can get very busy. So here I've added a simple heading, and as we scroll down through our code, you'll notice that all I did was just add paragraph elements, and I've duplicated the same sentence, but I've added just a little number here so that it makes it easy for us to distinguish between them. Again, the goal of this is to learn the animations and not to create a complicated website. So I've kept it simple for now. Okay, so we have Framer Motion installed. That's very important. And here at the top, I'm going to import it. I don't want to import the entire Framer Motion library. In this case, we want to import only the motion module. We have the ability to attach the motion module to individual elements. This will give us the ability to individually control them. Attaching the motion module is quite easy. You just add motion dot before every element's tag, just like this. Once motion is added, we will use three attributes. The first one will be the initial attribute. The second will be the whileInView attribute. And the third will be the viewport attribute. The initial attribute will set the styles for our element when the page first loads, and then our whileInView attribute will set the styles for the element once it comes into view. Viewport will allow us to create settings for this animation. You'll see here in a second once I use it. We want the element to appear as it scrolls into view. So we'll use the initial attribute to set the opacity of this element to 0. And once the element comes into view, we'll simply change the opacity from 0 to 1. Let's take this time now to add some settings so that we can see the error in our code go away. In this case, we have two properties that we can work with. The first one is once. So this means, do you want this animation to happen just once when the page loads and then the element first comes into view, or do you want this to happen every time? So as the element leaves the view, it goes to 0, it comes into the view, goes to opacity 1, etc. In our case, we want it to happen more than once, so I'll simply set this to false. The next property that we can work with is amount. So this is how much of this element needs to be in view for this animation to take effect. So for example, if I use 1, this means that 100% of the element has to be in view for it to appear. If I set it to 0.5, this is 50% of the element needs to be in view for the animation to happen. I'll leave it at 0.5, but of course, you can use whatever value you're wanting to use. If we were to load this page, the animation would happen. However, it would happen so fast that we would not be able to notice it. So to slow the animation down, we are able to use the transition property. With this transition property, we are able to use delay, and we are able to use duration. And with delay and duration, we are able to create our animation. So before I started recording this, I did practice a bit and created some values. So I know that 0.2 and duration of 0.5 will work well for us. All right, let's go down here and run npm run dev. Here we have our page loaded up in a browser. I'm going to refresh it, and please notice the animation. You see, as the page refreshes, it appears. I'm able to scroll out of viewport, and as I scroll back in, you see that the heading goes from 0 opacity to 1 opacity. I know we can do a little bit better than just having this element appear as we scroll into it. So let's jump back into our code. We can make our element slightly edge up as it starts to appear. So this means that in our initial attribute, I can simply set y. So this is the y coordinates. Of course, y is up and down, x is left to right. When it comes to positive and negative values, if we use a positive number, this means that this element will move 50 pixels down in the y coordinate. If I were to use a negative 50, this means that this particular element will move up in the y coordinate. Same with x, we are able to come back here. I can use the x property, and what this will do is move this element to the left 50 pixels. I can use a positive number, and it's going to move this element 50 pixels to the right. In our case, I want this element to initially start 50 pixels down, but as it comes into view, I want to move it back into its original location. So of course, 0 means back to your original location. The transition property here is still going to work with the y, with moving it. So it's going to work with opacity and also with the little bump that we're doing here. So let's save it and jump back into our browser. I'm going to refresh the page, and the element should appear, but it also should move a little slightly up. And there you go. As I mentioned earlier, we are able to attach this motion module to individual elements. And if we use different values here for our transitions, then this can create a really, really cool animation where some elements appear quicker than other elements. So let's go ahead and try this. Okay, so let's take our paragraph element here. I'll add motion to the opening tag. I'll do the same to the closing tag. Oh, and add a little bit of autofill there. Okay, so I know I'm going to be using the same attributes and almost the same values for these attributes. So to speed things up, I'm going to just copy paste things in here. The only thing that I want to change is the delay. And you know what? Let's keep the duration the same. So of course, delay is just how many seconds or how many milliseconds will have to take place before this animation comes into view. So let's think about it here for 1 second. The page loads, and 0.2 milliseconds, the animation will start for the heading. What I can do is for this paragraph, how about I do 0.4? Let's save, jump back into the page. All right, let's refresh, and we should see this one here appear first, and then the paragraph element will appear second, but shortly after. And there we go. I can scroll them out of the screen, and as I scroll down, we get the same animation. Let's push this a little bit further, and let's add the same thing to all our elements on this page. Okay, so I sped things up and added everything here for the sake of brevity, but please notice that they are all the same except for this H1, which we started with. Then I moved, the second paragraph to 0.4, and so on. I can move this one to 6. Maybe go back to 4. Going anything past 6 could mean it's a little bit too long, but this is up to you. It's your website and you set the values that you want. So I'm hoping I gave you some good ideas on how you can create your own custom animations. For a little bit more details, you can go over to Framer Motion's documentation, and here in the example side, you can just scroll down. You'll see a few here on the right side. Click on Scroll Triggered Animations. This is the same example that we used. Of course, their version is simplified. I added a few other little things to show you how you can push it further.